Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Hello, SBI Podcast subscribers. My name is Ryan Tognazzini. I'm a principal with SBI, a sales and marketing consulting firm dedicated to helping you make your number. With me today is Scott Brewer, who's a partner with SBI. And on our show today, we're going to discuss sales and marketing best practices for viewers just like you, executives trying to grow their revenues. How you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to the show.
Yeah, likewise. All right, buckle up, folks. Scott and I have known each other for 15 years. This one could get a little bit ugly. So on today's show, we're going to discuss a topic near and dear to the hearts of many business executives, sales headcount planning. This is an extremely dense subject. We couldn't possibly cover all of it in a single show. So today we're going to seek to answer the question, to hire or not to hire. So for those of you following along, we'll be using SBI's How to Make Your Number in 2016 workbook, and you can get this by going to salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-report. So we'll be focusing on step 5, which is sales strategy. And inside of sales strategy, it has a 5-step methodology, which we'll be using to discuss for today's show. So make your number. Step 5, sales strategy, 5 steps in sales strategy. Got it?
Got it.
All right.
Lots of 5s and steps.
Exactly. All right, crew, let's dive in. So we're going to discuss 2 scenarios where headcount planning might come into the picture for you. Okay. So scenario 1 is your annual quota increases. You're in your annual planning process for next year, you receive your sales number, and the goal goes up. Scenario 2 is you're short of your year-to-date goal. You need to make up ground to get to the number this year. So, Scott, let's start by tackling scenario number 1. So you're a sales leader or CEO. You just got a big increase in your annual revenue goal. Should you go on a hiring spree?
Well, many of you might think this is an easy one, right? You might be saying, of course, I have to hire more heads to hit the bigger number. But I would submit to you that this may not necessarily be the case.
Okay, continue on that one.
Yeah, so check out phase 1 of the sales strategy methodology. Do you have a sales plan? This is your opportunity to define how you'll make your number relative to your competition. Only 39% of sales leaders have a formal sales strategy. Part of a strategy is having a plan on how you will make your number. For example, ask yourself, do you have a financial model that summarizes how you'll make your number? Do you know how much it's going to cost to get there? Do you know how your headcount will break down across markets, segments, different verticals, etc.?
Okay, so sounds interesting. If I'm a sales leader watching this right now, I'm going 100 miles an hour. I'm trying to make my number. So why would I bother stopping to put together a sales strategy or a sales plan versus just going to hire a bunch more heads and cover the gap for next year?
Yeah, sure. I mean, check out SBI's revenue growth maturity model. If you're a sales leader and you do not have a sales strategy, you're in level 1 chaos. Ooh.
All right, so let's define chaos for our audience.
Yeah, it means the CEO might have a corporate strategy, Ryan, but none of the functional leaders, product, marketing, or sales, have defined their department's functional strategy.
Okay. So what? I mean, why do I care?
So it means making your number is unpredictable. Performance is random, and success seems to happen without much knowledge as to why. Contrast that with a level 5 organization, where the teams have aligned strategies that are implemented.
All right, well, some people say they'd rather be lucky than good.
Yeah, well, I guess that works on the golf course. We played together. You might lose a few bucks or some pride, but when the average tenure of a sales leader is only 19 months, your livelihood depends on more than luck. Our research shows that 51% of companies are level 1s. If you're in this category, you're not alone. The big implication of this is you are 4 times less likely to make your number than your level 5 peers.
Yeah, so what you'll see on the screen here is that 96% of companies with aligned strategies are making their growth objectives, while just 84% of those with misaligned strategies do not. So while companies with aligned strategies miss their objectives just 4% of the time, companies without miss 16% of the time, or 4x.
Some people watching might say they'd take an 84% probability heading into next year. This may be true, but wouldn't you rather have a 96% shot at making your goal next year, especially considering last year was a great sales year?
Yeah, so, all right, so let's tie this back to our headcount scenario. So I'm a CEO or a sales leader. We're in our annual planning process. The number's going up, and we're debating whether or not to add more heads next year. So connect the dots for me on why this method might not work for me.
Okay. Sure. If you're a level 1 company, you have almost 0 shot of adding the right heads.
Okay, that sounds a little bit severe.
Well, not really. When you're operating in chaos, nothing is predictable. You're throwing headcount to solve something that you can't clearly define. Go back to my earlier comments about having a documented sales strategy. How do you know what people to add, where to add them, or against what markets or accounts? If you haven't done this work, you're operating blindly, Ryan.
So what's the fix? I mean, how do I get myself out of this chaos that I'm stuck in?
Yeah, well, step one would be documenting a sales strategy that clearly articulates how the sales leader will allocate his people, money, and time for success next year.
Step one?
Yeah, step one. Remember, chaos means the CEO has a corporate strategy, but nobody else does. In order for the sales leader to be successful, he or she depends on others. For example, has the product leader determined what products we are going to produce to solve the problems of the market next year? Has marketing determined what campaigns it will run to stimulate demand for those products? Does HR know where and how to hire the people needed to pull this off?
Yeah, so what Scott is talking about is SBI's 6-step revenue growth methodology, which is on page 27 of the Make Your Number workbook. So, I mean, consider the impact to your business if you're missing these items. The CEO's job is to create value for the owners of the business. So whether it's shareholders, private equity, or another ownership structure, the CEO has to deliver dollars back to his or her ownership group. So every expense is looked at with great scrutiny. And adding more sales heads can cost anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000, in labor expense per head, depending on the types of people that you add. So if I'm the CEO, I'm asking the question of what do I get for my investment? I mean, what's the ROI? And if I'm the sales leader, what's the impact to my W-2 if I add a head and he or she doesn't deliver on the number?
Yep, and it's critical for the entire executive team to understand this. Even level 3 organizations who have documented strategies operate in silos, which still puts making the number at risk. If these questions aren't properly answered in your annual planning process, the chances of making the number go down significantly while your costs go up. Those of you thinking about adding heads to meet an increasing quota next year, you might want to think about taking a different view on how you've historically conducted your planning process, Ryan.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. And for those of you who would like to improve your annual planning process, you can have one of our experts lead you through a workshop that will detail how to do this. You can go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-workshop and request a workshop from one of our experts. When we come back, we'll talk about whether or not adding sales heads mid-year based on a revenue shortfall will help you make up the gap.
Do you have too many things to do and not enough time to do them? Is finding time to learn best practices almost impossible? The SBI Podcast is your solution. Turn time spent exercising, commuting, and traveling into productive learning time with a subscription to the SBI Podcast. SBI Podcast listeners get unique insight into real-world sales and marketing issues through interviews with your industry peers every week. Find us on iTunes by searching for Sales Benchmark Index Podcast and subscribe today.
Welcome back to the show. Today we're discussing the question of to hire or not to hire in order to make your sales number. In our first section, we talked about whether or not to add heads to meet an annual quota increase. The big takeaway there was ensuring you have alignment across the functional departments and a documented sales strategy before making those important investment decisions. So in this segment, let's shift our focus to making up an in-year gap. So Scott, I'm 20% behind my year-to-date number, and I'm looking for answers. How do I think about adding headcount in this scenario?
Yeah, this is an interesting one and not easy to solve. If you're in the middle of the year, your plan isn't working, and now you have to figure out a way to catch up.
Right. So some of you watching right now might feel like you're coaching the Bad News Bears. No matter what you do, it seems like the team can't put a win on the board.
Yeah, exactly. In our first segment, we talked a lot about strategic alignment in the form of the 6-step revenue growth methodology and documenting functional strategies to help with annual planning. Let's shift our focus here and talk about tactics, Ryan.
All right, so what you're looking at on the screen is a 2x2 grid. And on the horizontal axis, you have strategy, which is defined as doing the right things. And on the vertical axis, you have tactics, which is doing things right. So each axis has subcategories calling out both efficiency and inefficiency, as well as effectiveness and ineffectiveness.
Yep, and in traditional fashion, up and to the right is where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where your organization is doing the right things the right way. You're thriving because you're executing a brilliant plan brilliantly. You're doing things both efficiently and effectively.
This is typical of level 5 companies. They have a great plan, and they execute against it like crazy. Let's quickly define the other 3 quadrants for the audience, Ryan.
Yeah, sure. So let's take the lower left, called die slowly, which is the opposite of thriving, obviously. So this is executing a poor plan poorly. And companies who do this actually are luckier than some others in this 2x2 grid because their ineptitude is actually prolonging the life of the company.
Yeah, unlike the upper left, die quickly, which is executing a poor plan brilliantly. These companies have the wrong strategy, but they execute on it flawlessly, Ryan.
Yeah, it's a race to the bottom of the ocean for those guys.
Yeah. Lastly, we have survive in the bottom right, which is a brilliant plan executed poorly. These companies have the right plan, but just can't seem to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the offensive coordinator on a football team who's got a great game plan and a terrible quarterback can't throw the ball down the field. So, all right, so now we understand the difference between strategy and tactics. Let's come back to our scenario of adding headcount based on being behind the in-year number.
Yep. So if you're operating in Thrive, it's likely you're a level 5 company and you are not behind the goal. However, our research have found this is only 9% of companies. So let's talk about the other 91%.
Yeah, right. And if you're level 5 and you happen to be behind the number, adding heads here will likely help you get caught up. And this is because you've got the right strategy and you're executing well against it. So adding heads here will likely work for you. You can likely ramp them and make them productive in order to get caught up this year. So, okay, let's take the upper left quadrant, which is die quickly. So how should I think about mid-year headcount additions if I find myself in this category?
Yeah, we'd recommend against this. Adding heads in this situation will actually make things worse and accelerate your miss. If you're the sales leader in this situation, you need to raise your hand and bring this information to the CEO, the board, or anyone else. This is a bigger issue than just headcount to cover the shortfall.
So how do you recommend somebody does this without looking like they're making excuses or covering their you-know-what?
Well, I think it starts with asking the right questions, Ryan. If you look at the 6-step revenue growth methodology in the Make the Number workbook, go to step 1, market research, and 2, corporate strategy, and ask yourself the questions that are in the workbook. After you look at those sections, go to step 5 and stress test your sales strategy. You'll know you're in die quickly if you've got major gaps to the questions in that step 1 and step 2, which again are market research and corporate strategy. But step 5 is very clear.
Yeah, so let's go back to functional alignment. So in this case, maybe you're pursuing the wrong markets with the wrong products, the wrong messaging, and the wrong people. So, I mean, if this is the case, adding more people is only likely to make things worse.
Yeah, correct. Challenge yourself to ensure you're doing the right things, but question if those things are being done against a poor or non-existent market or corporate strategy. Okay, we're going to pause here for a short break. When we return, we'll wrap up our end-of-year headcount discussion by covering the bottom 2 quadrants of our 2x2 grid. Stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about adding sales headcount to cover the in-year shortfall. In the last segment, we talked about options for adding headcount if you're in the upper 2 quadrants, die quickly or thrive. Let's shift our focus to the bottom 2 quadrants of the 2x2, Ryan. Both of these are about tactical inefficiency. In the lower left, you have die slowly. In the lower right, you have survive. Let's start with die slowly.
Yeah, so if you're dying slowly, which is a great term, adding headcount won't necessarily put you out of your misery. I mean, you're not executing well on your incorrect strategy, rather. So it's not going to solve your problem. So, I mean, take BlackBerry, for example. They were the leader in smartphones before anybody. And what they ended up doing is they ignored the market. And they continued to build products that people ultimately didn't want. They thought that the keyboard was essential. And then Apple brought out things like touchscreens and started implementing Gorilla Glass. And they're still around, but they've lost their market position and they've continued to decline into obscurity.
Yeah, everybody used to have a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
So how should I think about adding mid-year headcount based on these categories, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, in this instance, I'd recommend the same approach you just suggested for die quickly. I mean, this is a strategic issue that may not sit in just the sales department. I mean, this needs to get fixed, and no amount of sales hires is likely to change your results.
So don't hire anyone?
Nope. I'd use those dollars and I'd go solve my strategic problems. So I'd look at assessing my organization to determine what the root cause issues are and how I can best solve them.
Sounds like take your medicine on this year's number and make up for it by going into next year with a clear vision and plan.
Yeah, and I mean, the message to the board here is we're getting our house in order, which is not an easy message to communicate, but it's better than continuing to try and solve your problems by deploying the wrong tactics against a poor strategy. I mean, this is a CEO or board level initiative that if it gets addressed, it gives you a shot at both making your number in future years and lasting beyond the normal 19 months of tenure of a sales leader.
Yeah, is that really an option though, Ryan? It sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, why not? If you've got a board or you've got investors or owners, I mean, they've got expectations on, growth and profits. And if those things aren't attainable because you got the wrong strategy, I mean, this is information they'd rather have now versus later. So, I mean, many of our viewers are likely homeowners. I mean, imagine you hire a contractor to do some repairs on your roof. Yeah. And during his work, he discovers you've got a massive problem that's going to cause your, roof to leak when it rains.
Sounds like you're speaking from experience.
May have had that challenge once or twice. So, I mean, the next time it rains, the entire house floods because the guy decided not to tell you anything about it. He just moved on with the job. So now you've caused thousands of dollars worth of damage. So as a homeowner, I mean, wouldn't you rather know that you have this problem and you could have at least spent a couple of 10, 20 grand to fix it versus losing your entire house? So if you're an executive at a company like this, I mean, you're getting paid the big bucks to deliver both good news and bad news. And I mean, this is a function of delivering a message that can fundamentally impact the success or failure of your company.
Yep. So put on your big boy pants and go earn your paycheck is basically what you're saying.
Pretty much, yeah. So look, they're not fun conversations, but the best leaders we ever encounter, they don't shy away from these discussions. They come with facts and they want to ensure that the message is an objective one and it doesn't appear like they're whining or complaining about their situation.
Okay, so let's look at survive. If you've got the right strategy but are executing poorly, should I add heads to cover my shortfall?
Yeah, so, I mean, this actually might work in a situation like this, but there are a few things that need to be true before, I'd recommend considering this as an option.
Lay it on me.
Yeah, so in successful companies, I mean, making the number is a 50-50 proposition. And what I mean by that is it's 50% talent and 50% performance conditions in which you place that talent. So, I mean, in this case, you've got the right strategy. So, what's holding you back is the tactical execution of that strategy. For example, I mean, maybe you're hiring the wrong types of people or you have the wrong processes in place.
How would I know this, though?
Yeah, so, I mean, let's start with your talent. I mean, say your strategy shifted in the last year and you're focusing growth and all your efforts on growing your healthcare and financial services verticals. And, I mean, ask yourself the question, have you changed the types of sales reps you hire? Are you hiring hunters who can walk the walk in a hospital or a bank and sell to those buyers? Or, I mean, are you still hiring the same people you've always hired and you're just adding them to the healthcare and the financial verticals?
Right. So a few things that come to mind here are role profiles, job descriptions, and candidate sourcing process.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Take a look at what you need. Does the recruiting team know that they need to change their approach? I mean, are they doing anything differently? Really, if you're counting on others to help you get your sales force hired and trained, make sure that these processes are dialed in before you start hiring. I mean, your chances of success mid-year, or I mean, really any time for that matter, are going to increase if you start executing on hiring the right people.
That makes sense, Ryan. How about performance conditions? What's that other 50% all about?
Yeah, so I mean, this is all about creating an environment where talent can be successful. So it could be things like process improvements, tweaks to your comp plan, I mean, how you onboard those new hires, how well adopted your processes are by the field.
Let's follow through on one of your earlier hiring examples, Ryan. How would improving one of these areas tell me if hiring more reps mid-year will help me make up the gap?
Yeah, so I mean, an easy one here is take your onboarding process as an example. So if you're selling into new markets, in this case, healthcare and financial services, you're going to need to update your onboarding process to help your new hires ramp more quickly so that they can sell successfully to those customers. If you don't alter those performance conditions, they're not going to be able to generate a result for you fast enough in order to close that mid-year gap.
True. Couple that with the things like sales cycle length, and you might compound the issue.
Yeah, I mean, good point. If it takes you 6 months to make a new hire productive and another 3 months for you to sell a deal, I mean, your new hires have no shot of making an in-year impact unless they've got 9 months of runway.
It's important to remind everyone that we've got the right strategy. So making this work is about tactics or doing things right.
Yeah, and maybe it's improving your sales process to increase your win rate or your deal size or shorten your cycle length. I mean, this would be a tactic that would benefit both new and existing hires in order to help you make up that shortfall.
Yeah, fair enough. So where would you go to recommend how to figure out how to do this? Where's the content I would look at?
Yeah, so I'd pick up a copy of the Make Your Number workbook, and I'd go to section 5. And here I'd look through sections 2 through 5 and take a hard look at where your tactical gaps might be causing you to miss the number. And you may be able to make some quick fixes that would help your new hires, make up that in-year gap. And ultimately, this depends on having the right strategy, remember, because that's what we're talking about here. So I think this helps you answer whether or not adding heads is going to help you make a difference this year.
Yeah, good discussion, Ryan. We're out of time for today's show. Thank you for joining Ryan and me. We hope you've enjoyed watching us and picked up a few insights along the way. If you enjoyed watching the show, I suggest you subscribe to SBI TV at salesbenchmarkindex.com/TV, or you can find us at our SBI YouTube channel. We have some outstanding guests and topics confirmed for future episodes that you will not want to miss. Until then, we wish you the best of luck in trying to make your number. So long.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.